All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar, Help for Stressed Educators During COVID-19, Noticing and Meeting Teacher Needs as Schools Reopen, presented by the wonderful Jen Alexander. My name is Naya Hyde, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm a marketing assistant at Brooks Publishing, who's a proud sponsor of today's webinar. Okay, we also want to let you guys know that we are doing a giveaway today. 3 lucky winners will receive a free ebook copy of Jen Alexander's new book, Supporting Students and Staff After COVID-19, Your Trauma-Sensitive Back-to-School Transition Plan. The winners will be selected at random from the chat, and we will announce them today after the webinar concludes. Without further delay, it is my great pleasure to introduce today's presenter. As a former special education teacher and current school counselor in Iowa, Jen Alexander has more than 15 years of experience providing support to young people and the educators who serve them. As a popular teacher trainer, trauma expert, and author, Jen shows fellow educators what works and why when it comes to building trauma-sensitive schools. With a unique ability to connect with students, educators, other helpers, and parents, she is devoted to facilitating school-wide trauma-sensitive transformation through effective professional development paired with school consultation. Jen holds degrees in psychology and special education teaching, as well as a master's degree in professional school counseling from the University of Northern Iowa. She is also a nationally certified counselor and registered school-based play therapist. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jen.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me. Everyone who's here, thank you for being here. This is a stressful time, no matter where you are at, for all of us. Although I also recognize that different professionals, along with different students and families and groups, are experiencing these stressors in different ways and may even be having other stressors layered on top of the pandemic that we're all experiencing. Thank you for being here. I really want to help you today to give you support for what you are experiencing, because we know that when you are better supported, you will be better able to be well and healthy, which is our first priority, and better able to support students and families too. All right, here's how we're going to start. We're going to have a poll, or use a poll, I should say. And I want you to think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned did you feel about trauma's impact on educators before the spring of 2020? With 1 being not a lot and 10 being very concerned. How concerned did you feel? All right, it looks like a lot of you, the majority of you, were between that 5 and 6, somewhere in that middle of the road. All right, we can go ahead and stop that one. And now let's compare that to the next question, which is, how concerned do you feel about trauma's impact on educators now? Definitely has gone up. Even higher majority are now putting that at that 9 or 10 range, and a few of you a little bit lower than that as well. That's exactly what I'm noticing in colleagues and other educators across the globe. Our concern about trauma's impact, not only on students, but also on ourselves and one another, has gone up, and for very good reason. Today, that's what we're going to focus on. How can you best support yourself and your team members so that you can be as well as possible while doing this work? I'm glad you're here. As Naya mentioned, I have a new book out. It's called Supporting Students and Staff After COVID-19. A lot of the ideas that we'll talk about today come from the book, although I've thrown in some new ideas as well. Here's where we're going to start. We're going to do another poll here to see what your role is, so that as I talk about examples today, I will try to tailor that to what best fits your needs as much as possible. So go ahead and let us know what your role is. Oh, thank you for the comment over in the chat. I'm glad that you like it. Glad you like the book. All right, lots of mental health folks on here, which is awesome. Some literacy people too, looks like. Okay, good. This is really helpful. We have a nice broad range of folks, which is always good, just like we do in our schools, which is great. We're glad you're here. Today is all about taking good care of you. My goal is to help support you, give you a place to share a little bit, along with some tips and tools that will help you do your best at being well during this really hard time. With that being said, everything that we do is optional. It's an invitation. You will have choices to make throughout our time. And if there's something that is bringing up big stress for you, whether that's related to something current or from the past, it's okay to pause. It's okay to take a break if you need to, or simply observe instead of participating in that part. No questions asked. I want you to do what's best for you always. With that in mind, we're going to start with a grounding exercise. This will be short, and you get to make a choice here about what you would like to do. One of the ways to help ground ourselves when there's so much worry, so much stress, is to ground to the environment that we're in. So one of the things you can do is just look around the actual room that you're in. Notice colors, textures, maybe things that are comforting to you in some way that you can look at. Like I can see trees outside my window. Maybe I want to just focus on that for a minute or so. Another way to ground is to go more inside of yourself. You can take some belly breaths to do that. In through your nose, out through your mouth if you'd like. And another way to help ground yourself is by physically feeling something in your body. And one way to do this is to rub your hands together till you get some heat going. And then you can just put your hands on your heart and feel that heat. That's you being alive, your passion. You're here for a reason. You're welcome to choose any of those, or if none of those feel helpful to you, you're welcome to just sit quietly or even scroll on your phone. We're going to take less than a minute for you to choose one of those options to just be here now. I hope that was helpful to you. Thank you for giving that a try. We often forget how just taking a moment to be in this moment, not focused on the past, not focused on what's to come, but just right here, how that can help center us and help us calm those stress responses that we might be experiencing. Today, I want to review the 4 essentials of trauma-sensitive schools with you, or introduce them if you're not familiar with them. Then we're going to spend the majority of our time recognizing how the stress of the pandemic and other stressors, such as fires, windstorms like we've had in Iowa, or hurricanes, or any other kind of stress, along with the social unrest that's happening in our country and understandable grief and anger about the injustices, about how all of that may be impacting us as we prepare to open or have opened our schools. I want to help you gain support and learn strategies that will help you notice the need and meet the need in yourself, but also within your teams. And then I'm going to invite you to name one way after today that you will do less in order to be more. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. If you learned something today and you would like to tweet it out, you're welcome to use my Miss Jen takeaway as your hashtag, and please tag me so I can take a look at your takeaways. Let's begin with talking about what is a trauma-sensitive school. A trauma-sensitive school is a safe and supportive community that enables both students and adults to feel safe, build caring relationships with one another, regulate their feelings and behavior, as well as learn. It comes down to the establishment and fostering and reestablishing and refostering of these 4 essentials in our trauma-sensitive environments. We need to help everyone feel safe, be connected, get regulated, and learn. The order is important because it will be hard for us as professionals to teach and for students to learn if we're not feeling safe, if we're not connected positively, and if we're not getting regulated in healthy ways. That's not to say that learning can't happen without the first three, but it's going to be harder. And so the more we can do to help one another feel safe, be connected, and get regulated, the more ready we will all be for high levels of teaching and learning. So we think about that first essential of helping everybody to feel safe. That's first for a reason. Because when we don't feel safe, that kicks in our entire stress response system and pushes us towards a fight, flight, or freeze response. And that really takes over our physical neurobiology and makes it hard for us to use upstairs brain processes that are going to be really important for focusing, for thinking, planning, and learning. Now, that being said, especially at this time when in some places across the country, actual face-to-face schooling is reopening, we must understand that people can't genuinely feel safe if they aren't actually safe. And that very much relates to our conditions that we have within our environments and how we have racism happening and how that impacts people's actual safety and feelings of safety, as well as so many different kinds of pieces as well. Anything that threatens safety is going to make it hard for people to feel safe. So if we look at those environments that may be reopening now, when it might not be safe to do so, we have to recognize that people are going to have a hard time feeling safe if they aren't actually safe. It's also why I don't want our state or national leaders to tell you untruths about how safe or unsafe those physical environments may be, because that can break trust. And in the same fashion, I don't want you as a professional not telling the truth to students and families about how unsafe or not environments are for them as well. One of the things I've been encouraging leaders to do is to use the word safer. So whether you are at doing learning in a distance fashion or face-to-face or some type of hybrid, instead of saying we're doing everything we can, we're going to keep you safe, which is something as an educator I've said many times to kids, I would not say that now because I can't guarantee that safety. What I'm encouraging people to do, and other people like Dan Siegel and Tina Payne-Bryson have been doing, is to encourage people to say, I want you to do everything you can to keep it safer. And to say to your colleagues, here are things you can do to help keep things safer for all of us. And eventually you can say that to kids. Here are things we can do to keep things safer, meaning safer than not. Let's talk just briefly about what trauma is, because it's definitely what's at play when educators and students and families may not be feeling safe. Trauma is a distressing experience or set of experiences that threatens a person's actual safety or perceived sense of felt safety to such a degree that it exceeds an individual's capacity to cope in healthy ways. So it's some type of experience that goes beyond our window of tolerance, beyond what we're able as an individual to cope with and manage in a healthy way. And that doesn't mean what you're able to cope with from your attitude or what you're able to grit your way through. It's literally at the neurobiological level, what you are physically able to manage within your body. And that can change at different times. And it's based on so many different factors, from your own early childhood experiences and brain development to things that are part of your DNA, from your temperament and your personality to other kinds of things in your genetic code. It's also influenced by nutrition and sleep and exercise, movement, and very much so by our support system. So there's definitely things we can do to boost our capacity and our window of tolerance to handle stress. But as stressors get bigger and bigger and outside that window of tolerance, it's understandable when that begins to take not only an emotional toll, but even a physical toll on what's happening in our bodies. And we must be aware of that as we do our best to care for ourselves, particularly in this time in the pandemic when these stressors are ongoing. They're not a one-time stressor. They're happening repeatedly and over a long period of time, as are many of the other traumas that people are experiencing. And here's a list of what some of those things might be. All of these things are potential traumas depending on the individual's reaction to these events. And you'll notice that the pandemic is on there. I mentioned single event trauma. That's a one-time trauma, such as perhaps a storm that happens could cause trauma for individuals. Developmental trauma is often a repeated trauma that happens in a child's first years of life, birth to age 3 in particular, where because the stress response system is on for such long periods of times and in a repeated fashion, it changes the way the brain and body develop, which then later influence functioning potentially throughout the lifespan if early intervention is not established and maintained. Much of developmental trauma sometimes happens even within relationships, oftentimes actually, where children are trusting adults to care for them, and those may be the adults who are actually harming them or not meeting their needs in the way that they require. And that causes a certain kind of trauma called developmental trauma. As we look at the pandemic, that's a collective trauma, meaning we have groups of people, large groups, who are affected by this event that's ongoing, and it potentially changes the way our society will function, not only now, but in the future too. One of the hopeful things about collective trauma is that we can have what's called post-traumatic growth, meaning if we come together and we thoughtfully and intentionally make decisions that will make our society and our communities better than they were even before the pandemic, that can be a positive thing. That's not to diminish the grief and death and fear and worry that are happening now, but if we do everything we can to come together and make things better moving forward, there can be positives that come out of this. Part of my fear, though, related to that is that we have such divide among us across the nation, if you're in the United States, across the globe as well. But that's not only impacting relationships that cover big areas of space, it's impacting us personally too. So I may have a friend, you may have a friend, someone you've really trusted, but now you're seeing that their views are different than yours perhaps. And not only is that a difference in opinion and impacting the choices they make, but their choices then impact your health and safety potentially as well. And that leads to lack of safety within our personal relationships, which can add another layer of stress to this pandemic. The sooner we all come together, work together, and listening to science and being on the same page, not saying we have to agree about everything, but the sooner we can come together and move forward together, the healthier we will all be as we come through this. Then we have what's called historical trauma. That's when trauma impacts an entire generation, including the generations to come. When we look at the effects of racism, we look at things like the Holocaust and how that affected, just harmed and caused suffering, if not death, for many, many people in a generation, and then that impacts generations to come. That's called historical trauma. And slavery is definitely a part of historical trauma, as well as the discrimination that's followed since then. So let's get started. Knowing that there are layers of trauma that you've possibly experienced, if not now, in the past, and that there is more stress that we're enduring and doing our best to get through now, how do we help one another and ourselves? Let's talk about that. The first thing is I want you to remember that everybody is doing the best they can in a right now distressing situation. Trauma is hard to cope with after it's over, but this collective trauma isn't over yet. We must be gentle with ourselves and one another. And that's hard to do when we're stressed, but it's very, very important. One of the ways that I like to teach people to do that, and that I wrote about in the new book, is that we help tend to ourselves and one another by noticing the need and meeting the need. Notice the need and meet the need. We can do that on ourselves. We can do that for others. And we can teach students how to do that too, how to notice the need and meet the need. Eventually, we can anticipate the need and meet the need before we're noticing this dysregulation that's happening because the need's not yet met. And that's even better when we can reach that point. But we really have to start with where we are right now. How do we notice our personal needs and the needs within our community? And then how do we work together to meet those needs? To help us begin to do that today, we're going to start by talking a little bit about our feelings and needs. You get to share as little or as much through this process as you'd like, and we're going to use the chat. So here's the first one. We're going to start with the sentence that starts with I feel, and I want to invite you to finish that phrase in the chat. You can use emotional words like maybe I feel anxious, or you can use feelings that you might feel in your body, like I feel knots in my stomach. You can even use colors if you'd like. And let's just all do our best to kind of read those as they fly in here. I'm seeing lots of stress reactions, lots of worry, overwhelm, anxiety. I'm also seeing some shutdown kinds of responses, exhausted, shut down, maybe feeling numb. So both of those things can happen. We can be feeling big feelings, or we can feel more of a shutdown. Both are common stress responses. And sometimes we feel a mix of both of those at the same time. Anger is coming up as well, understandable. I also see some positive things like feeling hopeful, excited to connect with kids. There's so much pressure that you're all under. Thanks for sharing about that. I hope that helps you see that you're not alone in what you're experiencing. I mean, we're just getting tons of responses coming in that are saying similar things. So you're not the only one who's struggling right now if you are. And you're also not the only one who's feeling positive things right now. And that's going to be true of all of your students and families too. The next question or sentence is this: I need. I want you to put into words in the chat, what is it that you need? Maybe you can get it right now. Maybe you can't. But what is it that you need? Lots of comments about needing a break, needing some space to figure things out, needing to feel safe. And there's a lot coming in about the need for support and communication and to be heard and to have your questions answered. Yeah. Do you see how these essentials are coming through just in these two phrases, I feel and I need? We're already talking about the need for safety and the feelings that come from not being safe. We're already talking about the need for answers, routine, structure, communication, as well as social support, because that helps us regulate, right? We're already talking about safety, connection, regulation, and learning. Yeah, thank you for that. Again, you're not alone. We must inhale care for self in order to exhale care for others. That's why I asked you to focus on your feelings and needs. That's why this entire webinar is focused on how can we support one another and help ourselves with our own stress responses. Here are some questions that you can use. There's a downloadable poster that comes with the book that you can use in classrooms and post, or use it as a tool to teach students how to use questions with one another around these feelings and needs. What do you feel? What do you need? How can I help? What we know about trauma and big stress, because trauma is big stress, often too much stress that goes on for too long, it impacts us in terms of physical reactions that happen, like those flight, fight, and freeze responses in the body, or even the shutdown responses in the body. It also impacts our emotions. A lot of what you're talking about there, from anxiety and what we call hypervigilance to kind of always being on the lookout for danger. That is a big part that happens when we're legitimately feeling unsafe in a situation. Like this summer, I did a lot of water walking. It's something I do every single summer. It's a huge piece of my self-care. I look forward to it all year. Go into the local pool, the lazy river, and walk with her against the current in the sun. It's wonderful. The pool was open this year, and with social distancing and masks, we were able to water walk in smaller numbers. And I found it less relaxing than I ever have, because I was hypervigilant the entire time, wondering, are we staying 6 feet apart? I'm coming up behind someone. How do I let them know that I'm there? Constantly on alert and watching. We've had students in our schools and adults in our schools who have been in hypervigilant states due to past trauma or current trauma forever, and may or may not have realized it. What I think this pandemic has done is bring awareness to the masses of educators in realizing that trauma is here. It's here in a bigger way, in a right now way. And one of the things we have to recognize is that we too are going to be feeling that stress, that anxiety, and the potential hypervigilance. And that can make us more irritable. It can make us less empathic. It can make us more impulsive and act fast rather than stopping to think things through. That's all related to the physiological responses that are happening and the parts of our brain that are becoming activated due to the threats, the real threats to our safety that this virus and other things are causing. This obviously impacts our actions. It also impacts our thinking and our capacity for some cognitive kinds of functions. So if you find yourself more distracted, more foggy in your thinking, more disorganized, not remembering things as well as you used to, those are very common responses to big stress. And especially when all of our routines have been changed, even as you go back to school, things are different. They look different. You're doing things in a new way. You're learning new things. And that's going to just add to the layers of stress that you're feeling. The fatigue that comes from being online, the fatigue that comes from so many decisions that have to be made is real, and that takes a toll on your stress response system on top of the stress you're already feeling, the worry that you're already feeling, and all that you're juggling at this time. Overall, it can impact mood, behavior, your thinking, can impact kind of even how you see yourself as well as your relationships. And that has an impact not only at school, but obviously at home too, and in your relationships. So all of these reactions are understandable. It's also why it's so important that we think about how do we help one another notice the need and meet the need, so that we can soothe these stress responses as often as we can and as quickly as we can in hopes of preventing long-term trauma responses. Will we be able to prevent all of those? No, we won't be able to prevent all of the overwhelm because the situation is overwhelming. But anything we can do to provide support for one another, to recognize those stressors, and then to intentionally provide soothing rhythms within our day will help all of us, kids included. We will get through this together one step at a time by feeling and dealing with stress responses in healthy ways as much as we can. We have to feel and deal. So if all we do is feel, we're probably going to become overwhelmed. If all we do is deal, we're probably going to shut off our stress responses and become numb, but that takes a lot of energy for your body to do that, and that will also take its toll. It will also lead you to be more rigid, less empathic, less creative and flexible, and you'll suppress your joy and your sense of power too, and that has negative effects on your health, including physical as well as emotional and mental health too. So we want to try to do both. How can we best feel and deal with our own emotions, and then how do we help our teammates do that as well? What nobody needs during this time? Racism. We simply cannot and should not call this the Chinese virus. That is not okay to do at school or anywhere else. And we need to be working on all the ways to be anti-racist in our schools as educators, and also within our curriculum and our practices too. The other thing that nobody needs right now, pandemic themes. I have seen some of this coming up on Instagram, often with good intentions. There's nothing wrong with helping kids through play to be able to experience masks and communicate their feelings and needs through play about them. And so if you have a center and you're able to do that, or even encourage families at home to have some masks for kids to play with stuffed animals or dolls or whatever it might be, that can be really helpful for kids to familiarize themselves with the masks, to build some normalcy around that and take some of the anxiety out of it by building that familiarity. What I get worried about, though, is when we start having themes that are pandemic related. So, for instance, I saw on Instagram something like, COVID can't keep us away. Welcome back to the school year. And there were like cutouts of the virus shape with students' photos. That's potentially harmful when we have children and adults who have lost family members to this virus, or who have family members who are ill or could become ill. That's harmful if we have students, and potentially we will in our environments, who have experienced that level of loss and grief. And it's not okay to have that be part of a pandemic theme, in my opinion. Is it okay to use such as like a mask image on a poster where you're giving tips about how to wear a mask? Of course. If we're doing things that teach about those safety routines, that's okay. But we need to be really mindful of how something that's attempted to be cutesy could actually be trauma-inducing and tap into those trauma feelings in a place where we need everyone to be able to feel safe. And then anything else that could cause harm, we need to be reflecting on that and learning about it and making changes too. And the reality is, in every school across the nation, there are things that are causing harm that we need to learn more about and make changes about. We're not going to go into all of that today, but it's something I would love to help you learn more about over time. In everything we do, it's always better when we're together, in the words of Jack Johnson. This work isn't all on you, and you're going to need the support of your colleagues for your own health and safety as well. In the new book, Supporting Students and Staff After COVID-19, one of the ways I encourage educators to build on this theme of working together and being stronger together is by highlighting the read aloud Swimmy by Leo Leone. I love this story. It's beautiful illustrations. If you're not familiar with it, it's all about a little fish, Swimmy, who you see on the cover there, who's gone through an experience with a big, scary tuna fish that chased some of his school of fish away. And he's now kind of coming back out in the ocean, encouraging another school of fish to come out and explore, but they're scared to do that. And so Swimmy is a leader and encourages everyone to swim together in the shape of one large fish to scare that big tuna fish away. I just think this metaphor, whenever face-to-face schools are reopened, is a metaphor that will be really important for us to utilize, and that you could build an entire unit around, which is what I did for elementary students in the book that I wrote. There are lessons there for you to help introduce this book, discussion questions, activities, things that you can do to build community around this idea that we're better together when we're working together. You can also adapt these ideas for distance learning if you're teaching online as well. But I wanted to share that with you today, even though we're focused on taking care of you and one another, because that's an important metaphor for us too, that it's not all on you, that we're doing this together. So, how can we, as educators working together, use these 4 essentials to improve educator well-being? I'm going to give you some ideas about that today. Again, those essentials are helping everyone feel safe, be connected, get regulated, and learn. So let's start with feeling safe. It's important that you think about what's going to help you feel safer rather than unsafe, and help the people on your teams to be able to talk about what's going to help them feel safer. And you might have to negotiate some things together. It's easier to do that up front than it is after the fact. So let's say you're going to, let's say your school is face-to-face and you're going into a team meeting where you're going to be in the same room. I encourage you to talk about that ahead of time. I'll feel safer if we do this. What will help you feel safer? And negotiate and come to some agreement. That will help prevent you being in a situation that doesn't feel comfortable and then needing to address it. But if that happens and you are in a situation that's making you feel uncomfortable, I think we need to normalize statements like this. Sometimes I forget to mask up. Maybe you forgot to. Or I'm not comfortable with this much closeness. Looks like this hasn't been cleaned yet. How can I help? Who else could use hand sanitizer right now? Happy to share. I have been a vocal leader about the importance of following the scientists' recommendations as it relates to this virus since it began. I have concerns about schools, including schools close to me, who are reopening, and that is not safe for educators as well as students. And even in light of all of that, even in light of being a leader in terms of writing a book on the topic, I found myself just a few weeks ago in a situation where I didn't follow through with what I believe is best. And I compromised safety for all of us by not making a decision to ensure that we were distancing and mask up in a situation where we were all very far apart and outside at first. And then socially, the situation changed very quickly. And I fumbled and stumbled and didn't handle it the way that I wanted to. And it just really reminded me how we're all social beings. We all want to connect. None of us want to offend. And it's uncomfortable in those situations to stand up and to make some of these statements. And so the more you can practice it ahead of time, the better off we will all be, because I really regret that. I in my action, could have contributed to the spreading of the virus. And that's something we all have to take responsibility for, and having some words to help us with that will help. It's also why I think we need strong leadership making some of those decisions for us, because as social beings, it's hard for us to do the right thing. It's hard. We're built to connect. We're built to be close. And it's one of my fears about children who are going back in a distanced way is I'm more afraid of the day when teachers don't have to nag and police them to be far apart, because it means they've shut down some of those natural responses and needs for connection. And that really worries me for children's development. I also don't like it that educators are being put in a position where they need to police and nag students over things like that. We have enough of that we need to change in our schools already, and that just adds to it. So I commend those of you who are doing distance learning or have districts who have made that decision or states who have made that decision. It's definitely, in my opinion, safer at this time. Let's focus on connection now. How can we help one another be connected, even though it may look different than it used to? How can you seek comfort and support when you need it, but also before you need it, so that you're creating a rhythm of care that's not marked by huge spikes of dysregulation because of extended periods of isolation that then you have to recover from. So what can you do to seek support? How can you connect with your friends and your family? How can you connect with your teams and communicate your feelings and needs with one another? How can you ask for what you need with each other? It's so important right now. And it's also important to realize that it's okay to not be okay. If you can't be not okay during a pandemic, I don't know when it's okay for people to not be okay. I happen to think it's okay to not be okay anytime, because life throws us stressful things, some more than others. And we need to normalize asking for support and help. It's okay to do that. It's actually healthy. And that when we do that, we model to kids how to do that as well. Just like when we share our feelings and express our feelings with kids, that models to them how they can do that and helps create that safe place where we can support one another. It also means that If you're noticing that your anxiety or sleeplessness is going on for longer than a couple of weeks, or some other mood changes that are related to maybe signs of depression or irritability and anger are interfering in your functioning for more than a couple of weeks, ask for help. Use those employee assistance programs if you have them. Seek counseling. Talk to your doctor if you need to. There's nothing wrong with that, and it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It means that something really difficult is happening to you, and that's true of all of us right now. As educators, many demands are being placed on you to learn new things, support your kids. I know you're worried about your students if you're not face-to-face, and if you are face-to-face, you're worried about everybody's health in that too. Plus, you might be learning new technology and applications and trying to shift your entire way of working with people, and all of that's going to take its toll on you. Okay. With that in mind, how can we help one another regulate? Well, first, slow down. Slow it all down. Then even more after that. We all feel like a lot's coming at us. That's true of students too. You will need to intentionally go slower than you think. Because if we don't, if we're hurried and we're throwing things at one another in that fast pace that we're all pretty typical to, a couple of things are likely going to happen. First of all, if you've been social distancing since March and sheltering at home, you have not, and your students have not, been out in the pace of a school environment, okay? So the sights, the sounds, the number of people, everything coming at us, going back into that, whether that's online or face-to-face, is going to feel really fast. And when you're already stressed and you're already fatigued and possibly not sleeping well, that's just going to take even more of a toll on you. And so if then everything you're trying to do is fast and you're throwing things in your communication and at others in a quick, fast-paced way as well, that's going to just contribute to hypervigilance for all of us. So what we need to do is counter that natural hypervigilance that we're all feeling, that fast, I need to act fast sense of being and energy inside, with an intentional slowing down of things. Slow down your words. Slow down your pace. Even checking in on how fast you're walking, how fast you're talking. Slow it all down and plan to do less in an amount of time than what you might be used to. Also, keep in mind that it's important that whatever you do to help yourself regulate needs to be healthy. So what are some examples of that? You want to build in regulation and patterns of regulation throughout your day, before school, during school, after school too. It is so hard to slow down. And if we're all doing it and reminding ourselves of it, it will get easier with practice. The other thing you can build in is movement. So think big muscle movement. Exercise, riding a bike, swimming, walking, running, whatever works for you. How can you build in routines of that throughout your day? Because that stressed energy, that energy that comes from trauma responses being activated, you will feel better when that is, you have a way to expel that energy, a way to kind of use that energy in your body through big muscle movement. And the more that can be part of your routine, the healthier you will be. You will also want some times of slower, more regulated movement. And maybe you want to go from big muscle movement, doing something more aerobic, to doing something slower. You can even do that with your students, whether it's online or face-to-face, doing some big muscle movement, and then maybe moving into yoga or other kinds of gentle movement, or just a more paced, relaxed walk. That will help your body regulate as well. You can also use music to help you with that. And you can also even use that time to think about, what are my next steps going to be? If this is the job I need to tackle, what is my next step going to be? And that can help you. Of course, breathing is helpful in terms of regulation. We did some of that when we started today. And in the new book, there's lots of kind of creative ways that I created to help you teach different ways to use belly breathing with your kids. And some of them are paired with different types of gentle movement as well. And then focus on action. What's something you can do that will be helpful, like that next step we talked about, or just something that you might enjoy. How can you play music? How can you work in the garden? I don't know about you, but when we go back to school, all the things I did a really good job of that were part of self-care in the summer often get put on hold. And this year more than ever, we have to intentionally not allow that to happen. And in some ways during a pandemic, might actually be a little bit easier for you. And here's why. I know that sounds crazy, but here's why. You will have more on your plate than you absolutely will be able to do. Way more. So you might as well set the limit each day at a place that leaves you with something left inside of you in terms of energy than to deplete yourself completely as much as you can. So at the end of the day, you can look at your list and see that you have 25, 30 things left on it. Is it really going to help you that much to do 5 more and have 20 to 25 instead of 25 to 30? Or are you going to be better off if you stop at the stopping point you're at and leave it at 25 to 30 things undone, go home and engage in a rhythm that helps soothe your stress responses, helps you feel better, helps you be better, helps you be more connected to your people, enjoy some of your time and get good rest, because that will help your immune system be at its best. Stress takes a toll on your immune system, and you can't afford that right now. You really couldn't afford it before, but you absolutely can't afford it now. So stop before you get tired, before you get exhausted, before you're completely run down, and fill yourself up in whatever those ways are and create rhythms around that. There's some ideas in the self-care chapter of the book to teach you how to create some of those specific rhythms and give you ideas about that. It's about making small changes that create habits of routine, that create a rhythm that soothes those stress responses. You're going to need that more than ever. Is that going to fix this pandemic? No, it sure isn't. But it will help keep you healthier and at your best while you're going into this and continuing in this tough time. And as always, if you need support, it's okay to ask for it. That's what counselors are here for. They're here to support you, and other mental health professionals are here to support you as you go through things that are hard. And that's true for an educator on any day, because secondary traumatic stress reactions are very real for us in our role. But these aren't even necessarily secondary traumatic stress reactions we're talking about. We're talking about primary traumatic stress reactions that could be happening to you as part of the pandemic and all of the other layers of stress that are part of our worlds right now. As I said, rest before you're exhausted. Please do it for you. But if you're not doing it for you, then do it for your people who care about you and depend on you, because they need you as healthy as you possibly can be. I have used this comment a few times this summer in professional development. It was just something I said one day, and people gave me a lot of communication around it. So I'm going to share it with you too. You can't positive pants or grit your way through a pandemic. And I want you to be cautious of leaders who are overemphasizing a positive attitude or keeping your chin up or having a good attitude right now. Is being positive and having a growth mindset important? Yes, and it can help us be healthy. It can also be used in a way that pushes people away from sharing what they really feel and what they really need. And that's not healthy. I'm a huge believer that educators and students, along with families, need to be able to share what they really feel right now. We can't deal with feelings that we're not feeling and expressing in a way that works for us. That means expressing the worry, expressing the sadness, expressing the deep suffering and grief when and where people choose to do that, and in their trusted relationships when they want to. I don't believe we should force anyone to do that sharing, but I believe that we should offer safe, supportive communities for one another so that if people want to share, they can, and when they want to share, they can. We're not helping anybody by telling them they must be positive, they must push all of that down and hide all of that, because it doesn't make those hard feelings go away. It just pushes them down, and then people don't get the support they need to actually get through it in a healthy way. As we kind of wrap up here today, I want to leave you with these words. Educators, you matter. You sacrifice a lot for your students already. We must ensure that you are not the sacrifice in this pandemic. Alone, you may only be one voice, but together we are powerful, just like Swimmy taught us. This is an image from Leo Leone's book. We are powerful together, and that means we must use our voices to stand up for one another because you are worth taking care of. You matter. What questions do you have? And I believe Naya probably has some pulled out for us already. I would love to take some time to answer those.
Yes, we do. We have a lot of great questions. Let's see. So somebody asked, what can we do to help teachers that are feeling so overwhelmed at this time? Do you have any practical tips or ideas?
So I think the first thing is to allow them to express what they feel and acknowledge it. It sounds like you're feeling really anxious and overwhelmed. What's one thing that you feel like you need right now? And then how can we negotiate to try to get closer to meeting that need? Maybe we can't meet it all the way. Maybe there's an answer that or a decision that can't be changed. But how can we meet the need? And often if you keep going deeper with the need, like someone might say, I need this taken off my plate. I need to not have to do this. Why is that? How would it help you if that was taken off your plate? Are you saying you need more time to be able to rest? Okay, how can this doesn't get taken away, but how can we negotiate this so that you get the time that you need for rest because that matters? So maybe we negotiate the timeline or the speed of how things look. If you keep going under the knee, you'll get to the base, the foundation of it, and it's going to be a healthy request and that you can help people meet.
Awesome. Another question we got is, how do you slow down in an environment that pushes for quick results?
Yes. I've been in those environments. I've helped create those environments. I've been part of the rhythm that keeps that going. And I know what it's like to think, well, if I just get this done, then I can slow down, right? Like we get in it. That's part of, for some of us, it's part of our culture. And the best time to interrupt it is in the moment. To normalize those things of saying, I'm going to need more time for this. This is a big ask for right now. I'm going to need to slow this down. And then to respond to those needs when we say that to each other, to not get irritated with each other, but to understand that, oh my gosh, there's somebody honoring their needs to slow this down. How can I join them in that and then help create this rhythm that goes slower?
That's awesome. It's definitely probably hard, but good to slow down for sure.
Yes.
Another question we got was, if I'm with a colleague at school and they're not wearing their mask, how can I politely and warmly ask them to wear a face covering?
I think that some of the comments on that slide can be helpful. Sometimes I forget my mask. Did you forget yours? I'm happy to give one to you. I would feel better if we're both masked up right now. And if you have, hopefully you do have, but I know not all districts do. If you have a rule about that, you can say, I don't want you to get in trouble. I know that's the rule around here. Here's a mask. So carry extras with you so that you can offer that to another colleague. And it's also okay if they kind of push back on that. It's okay to say, I understand that we see this differently. I'm going to need to do this for myself because this is important for me. It's hard. It's hard, and we need to do it.
Definitely.
And the more think of power structures, the more a leader does that, the easier it is for the people under them with less power to do that. And then the people under us, the power structures are there. And the more it's modeled from those who have more power, the easier it is.
Definitely. Speaking of leaders, so another person asked, as an administrator, how can you meet the needs of teachers without being positive pants all the time? What are some tips for how to help our colleagues respectfully?
I think it goes back to those feelings and needs and encouraging people to be honest about what is it they feel, what is it they need, and then to be able to try to negotiate that like we talked about, but then to say, even to say things like, I hear you that this would be really important for you right now. I wish that I could say yes to this. It's not something I can say yes to, but I promise to revisit it. Or here's how I am willing to try to help you with this need. I don't think we should lie to people. I think we need to be direct in about what we can and can't do or will or won't do, and acknowledge that people have the right to have their emotions about that. This isn't the answer that you were probably hoping for, and I'm sorry if you're feeling distress around that.
Awesome. I think we will ask one more question just to be conscious of everyone's time. Let's see here. Do you have any ideas for supporting first-year teachers specifically going back to school during like the pandemic?
Yes. I'm just sitting with that for a moment because I feel for first-year teachers, and I also think not having a way that you're used to things being might help you to be a little bit more flexible. And so while I want you to lean into the people with experience and listen to them, they have so much wisdom to share with you. I also do want you to hesitate to speak up and to share your new ideas and creative ways of seeing things, because you will be able to be more flexible and creative. And don't shy away from sharing what you think, because you might have some really good ideas that would help everybody on your team.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for answering those questions. You gave some great responses. I'm sure people will have more questions. We'll get those to you. So I'll let you keep going.
That's great. I do want to go back to content for just a little bit as we finish up here. And here's what we're going to do in the chat. We're going to do something with this slide, and then we're going to end with a goal. And so on this slide, we're going to take 3 statements that I want you to finish. And here's the first one. I am thinking that COVID-19, finish the sentence. I am thinking that COVID-19, in fact, I'll put it over there for us. Yeah, I understand all of those wishes over there. Here's the next one. We have to. We have to. Look at all that. The first one, we got all the feelings and where we're at and how scary this is. And now we're getting how we have to come together, be part of a team. That's where healing comes from, and that support and community. Yes, yes, yes. And the last one, when all is said and done. When all is said and done. Look at the hope we have together. It's there. This is hard, and we can get through it together. As we finish up today, I want you to think of one thing you can do less to be more. Maybe it's you're not going to vacuum. Maybe it's I'm not going to spend much time on a certain log I have to turn in. I'm going to get it done, but it's not going to be detailed like it usually was or was in the past. What's one thing you can do less of or even stop doing so that you can be more present, be healthier, be with your people and getting the support that you need? What are you going to do less of? I see several of you saying I'm going to do less work at home. I just want to share one little example of that. Before March of last year, I would still bring my computer home. This probably started in, I want to say September. I'd have to look back, but I think it was September last year. I brought my laptop home almost every night. And one night I forgot the cord. And when that laptop was out of juice, I was done working. And I recognized that really helped me. And so from then on, I never brought the cord with me. And when it was done, I was done too. So whatever you can do to do something that kind of automatically puts a boundary around you, I know for me that helps. Thanks for sharing those things a lot. You can also use this as a permission slip, and I have a download over on my website right now where you can download this and print it out if you want to use this with your staff. What can they give themselves permission to do less of right now to help themselves be well? Because we must be well to do this work well. Also because you are enough. Thank you so much for being here today. Check out my new book. I would love to hear reviews from you and to hear what's helpful, if anything, and what your thoughts are. And I know you're going to have lots of ideas that you build on from it too. And I would love to hear that from you. I have some upcoming trainings that you are welcome to learn more about and attend if you would like as well. Starting next Saturday, I'm doing an educator self-care workshop with Anna Paravano. I believe I'm saying that correctly. I don't usually say her last name, so I hope I said it correctly. And that's online on September 5th. We will be focused on educator self-care. There'll be a little bit of review from today, but then we're going to go into how do you design spaces and time by making some small changes to make your routines have more of a rhythm of self-care and be more regulating for you. So please consider joining us for that. Then on Saturday, October 10th, we'll focus on helping kids get regulated. Each of these training seminars in this mini-series are 3 hours in length. You can choose either the morning or the afternoon session on these days. And there is a bundle discount if you sign up for all 3 of the ones that are coming up, including Saturday, November 7th, where we will talk about community care and support. I can also come to you and provide trainings for your districts and organizations. I'm actually not school counseling and under a contract this year because I'm facilitating professional development full time. So if that's something you're interested in, we can do that face-to-face when you're ready for that, or we can also do it online, and I would love to help you with that. Last but not least, I have a couple of all-day trainings coming up. My level 1, 2, and 3. I have all new content that was not included today. We'll go in depth into understanding how trauma impacts kids and what we can do to build trauma-sensitive environments, including by helping our most severely traumatized youth. I have Saturdays in September that are available for level 1, 2, and 3. Those are all online, and you're welcome to join us. And we will also have an online Brooks training coming up on October 29th and 30th. Those are, I believe, a Thursday and Friday, if I remember correctly. Same content as the other level 1, 2, and 3, just different dates. And so please consider joining us for that. We would love to have you. There's so much that we can learn together. And of course, check out my website. Follow on social media if you'd like, all free information there. We're just glad to have you as part of this movement. And I really hope that you will take good care of yourselves and one another all the time, but especially this school year. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, Jen. That was amazing. I definitely think kept us all engaged and really appreciated all the questions you asked people to comment in the chat. I did upload all the links to Jen's references in the comment in the chat box, so feel free to click through those for more information. Again, I did want to just let everyone know that check your email after this webinar to see if you're one of our 3 lucky winners today. We'll be contacting you soon to email you your copy of the book.
Yay!
To learn more about Jen Alexander's new amazing book, Supporting Students and Staff After COVID-19, Your Trauma-Sensitive Back-to-School Transition Plan, you can follow the link on your screen. We also included it in the chat a few times as well. Again, thank you, Jen. You were amazing. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. On behalf of Brooks Publishing, EdWeb, and Jen Alexander, I just want to thank you for spending the time with us. And I really hope you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you next time for our next webinar. Have a great one.